Who is the one camp star that you need to be buying in your Dynasty leagues? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also check me out over on the Locked On Cowboys podcast. And joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can check out all of his great work over on SI. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course, Matt Williamson is here from Steelers camp. You can follow him on Twitter at Williamson NFL. And on today's show, we are answering your mailbag questions. And this first one comes from Tyler. He wants to know, fellas, who is the one camp star that you are buying in your Dynasty leagues this year?
I jotted down 3. Now, I'm not implying I think these guys are wonderful football players or going to live up to their draft status for 2 of them, but it's mostly about situation. And I want to start with Woody Marks. I think he's a tremendous zone runner, a great cutback runner. Obviously, the Mixon injury is a huge influence on this selection. And the other thing is they gave up a future third to ensure that they could get Marks in a running back heavy draft. So that in itself is kind of all I need to know for him to be fantasy relevant. They like him. He's a good system fit, etc. But he's also a terrible man blocking runner, and they're not just going to run 100% zone when he's out there. And he's really, really bad in protection. So there's some concerns, and I definitely want to watch him in the preseason. But I think the opportunity is tremendous, and they love him, and he fits the majority of their system, so I'm in. Kyle Pitts is another, and it's not that I can't quit Kyle Pitts. I kind of quit him a while ago. I loved him coming out of school, the idea of mismatches galore. We knew all the hype coming out of Florida. But where I'm going with this one is the Mooney injury. I mean, they're the heaviest 11 personnel team in the entire league. And if they really actually make Pitts more of a, quote, wide receiver and can move him around and match him up, could he be the number 2 target in this offense? And again, that's all I really need. I don't think he separates against good corners well. I don't think he's the athletic freak on the field that we thought he might be. But again, if he's the second biggest target earner in a decent offense, that's kind of all I need to know. But the one, if I had to plant my flag, I would go Anthony Richardson. And again, I'm not even saying he's good at football, but all reports are him and Jones are neck and neck, or Richardson even has the lead. Jones has done nothing to squash the competition. The injury, for now at least, for Richardson is out of the way. But the biggest thing here is, as bad as he was last year, he was 5th in fantasy points per dropback last year. And the year before, he was 1st. So just get him on the field and buy him cheap, and he'll score fantasy points, whether he's good at football or not.
So just really quickly off the top, we're actually going to talk about Kyle Pitts on Thursday's show. So I'm going to leave that one alone. So make sure you guys check that out. But Fabs, I want your thoughts on Woody Marks. We touched on Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon during Tuesday's show. Is Woody Marks somebody that you want to be buying in your dynasty leagues?
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. He's in a perfect situation to potentially become the number 1 running back in that offense. I mean, maybe as soon as this season, but certainly in 2026. I've talked about Joe Mixon before we found out that this foot continued to be a problem and that he was going to miss the rest of training camp, and potentially, who knows how much further beyond that he'll miss time. I just wasn't in on him because 29 years old, he's had a lot of work. And if you look at what happened to him after the first 11 games of 2024, he fell off a cliff statistically. And, maybe the injury was part of that. We're not sure. But then Houston came in and they drafted Marks, and then they signed Nick Chubb. And then you're scratching your head. Okay, well, what's that move for? And now we know it's because Joe Mixon's not right. And we don't know that he will be right. And so moving forward, maybe in week 1, we see a Nick Chubb, Woody Marks share in that backfield. And I mean, ask D'Amico Ryans. I mean, Nick Chubb's not the same dude. Okay. Nope. He's 29 years old. He was a great running back. You could argue he was the best pure running back in the NFL during his salad days, but he's, had that knee injury that was so gruesome a couple years back. And then last season when he did play, which was not a ton, he didn't look like the same player. The offensive line in Houston has got question marks. So no pun intended. So I would say that
nice.
He is
well
certainly he's a player in that backfield from a dynasty perspective that I want to target. And I don't really think there's any question about that.
And real quick on Mixon, he has not been a dynamic player the last couple of years. I mean, the Bengals gave him away, but the beauty of him has been reliability. I mean, that's like the only thing he really is going for him anymore. And if that's gone, then what do I care about Mixon anymore?
Matt, I want to ask you real quick about Anthony Richardson, because I'm actually at a point now. His value has gotten so low that I'm intrigued. When we were talking about him as like a top 10, top 12 quarterback option, like during his rookie year, it was just insane, right? Quarterback 25 now. You can get him after guys like Justin Fields, Bryce Young, Tua. Are we now in a spot where you are willing to kind of stash him and just wait and see?
100%. Because even if he washes out here in a Trey Lance, Malik Willis fashion, he'll end up somewhere and maybe get a shot next year. I tend to think this is his last hope, but the competition isn't great. They have such an investment in him. He's going to get every benefit of the doubt. And like you said, the cost is just so minimal. When he's on the field, he pumps out fantasy points.
All right, Fabs, who do you got? Who's your camp star that you are buying in dynasty leagues?
Yeah, really excited about Emeka Egbuka. When you hear Baker Mayfield come out and talk about this kid being able to play, all 3 wide receiver positions, based on what he did at Ohio State, people compared him to Jackson Smith and Jigba. And we all know JSN was very good last season. I think he'll be very good again this season and into the future. And also, the Buccaneers have questions at wide receiver. Mike Evans is 32. He's in a contract year, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best wide receivers of our generation. He won a Super Bowl, but father time comes for everybody. And so at what point does Mike Evans start to fall off? Is he back next season? Does he decide to retire? There's a lot of questions there. Chris Godwin, they inked him to a 3-year extension, but he's coming off of a pretty gnarly ankle injury, and we don't know when he's going to be back. And so I think there is a world where Emeka Egbuka could be the #1 fantasy wide receiver in Tampa Bay as soon as next season. He has gotten rave reviews across the board. The Buccaneers didn't draft him in the first round to keep him on the bench. They're going to utilize him in a prominent role. Maybe his career starts off like JSN, who came into Seattle and was behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and then really didn't break out until his second year. I think that's probably going to be the likely scenario, unless Godwin's going to be out for a while. And if he's going to be out for a while, then Egbuka is going to play a lot of slot. And that Buccaneers offense, we assume and we hope that it's going to be as productive this season as it was last season, even with Liam Cohen gone. I am just a big fan of Emeka Egbuka. I think he is going to make a big-time impact in fantasy football for years to come.
Matt, thoughts on Egbuka?
Yeah, really warming up to him as well. And a lot of it's just because I have extreme faith in the Buccaneers organization, front office, plan, talent evaluation. And I don't think they needed to take a receiver in round 1, but they had such a high grade on him. The more you read the tea leaves since the draft, like he's probably a 9th or 10th on their board, and they couldn't believe he's there, so they grabbed him. So they're going to make opportunities for him, whether it's immediately or like a JSN, like Fab said, it waits a year. Evans isn't going to be here long. Godwin's an issue. McMillan's worth bringing up, though. I do think he finished the season strong and is in the mix. But no, I'm with you. I just think he's a really good football player, and the Bucs are smart about how they use really good football players.
And I'll be real quick. Dante Thornton for the Raiders. The drumbeat has been steady, right? He got drafted in the 4th round when a lot of people thought he'd be like a late round pick. He goes into training camp day 1 with, he's the outside X receiver in this offense. And every single day he's making a big play down the field. He doesn't need to be a polished guy to be a fantasy relevant receiver. I've compared him a little bit to DK Metcalf, who Pete Carroll had with the Seahawks, who they drafted. Don't be surprised if Dante Thornton is somebody that puts up a pretty decent rookie year. Wide receiver 78 right now on Dynasty League football. You can get him for nothing.
Al Davis would like him.
Oh, yeah, of course.
That may not be a good thing, though, Matt. I mean, you remember Darius Hayward-Bay?
Yeah, well, it's just nice that the Raiders are bringing back the vertical passing game, which is what they're, go back to your roots. All right, let's talk about some league settings for your Dynasty leagues. Should you have kickers? Should you have team defenses? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me, Fabs, and Matt are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. One of my leagues, we're going on to year 18, and we've played them all on Yahoo. It's easy to set up. The mobile app is fantastic. And the Smack Talk just hits a little bit different on the message board. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. And it all begins on August 4th. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That is yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This next question comes from Dylan. He wants to know, guys, do you guys prefer to have kickers and defenses in your Dynasty League? It's been a long debate and argument in our leagues. What are your thoughts? Matt, why don't you go first?
I don't feel super strong about kickers one way or another. So if they're in, fine. If they're not, fine. But like my Steeler co-host makes fun of me all the time. He'll be like, Matt, you know the league so well, but you don't know any team's kicker or punter. I'm like, no, I really don't. And I'm not going to even go out of my way to learn them. So that's one less thing I would like to think about in fantasy as a whole, Dynasty as a whole. And I also don't love that a lot of times kickers get opportunities because red zone offenses fail or something that's outside their control. Defenses are the total opposite, though. I mean, especially for my particular skill set, knowing the whole league and, who the good pass rushers are, the different schemes, schedules. I think there's a lot to unpack with pulling out good defenses. And not to sit here and just pat myself on the back, but like I've been playing fantasy a long time. I'm always one of the guys that takes the defense very, very, very late in draft. And I always get more points out of them than I should, rotating defenses throughout the league or whatever. So I see it as a personal strength and also a really deep knowledge of the league to know where the defenses are that score fantasy points.
Fabs, what do you think?
So it's called fantasy football, right? And kickers will use their feet to score points. So yeah, I'm a fan of kickers. Listen, I know, my buddy Jake Seeley always, talks about banning kickers and that kind of thing, but kickers can be valuable. Ask anybody who had Brandon Aubrey a few years ago. I mean, he was unbelievable. And kickers nowadays, I mean, they're booting 60-yarders like they're nothing. Okay. And I think there are certainly, kickers that are reliable. I mean, for years, Justin Tucker was very reliable. You go back to Steven Gostkowski, Adam Vinatieri. These guys are all valuable from a fantasy standpoint. Chris Boswell, you want to talk about the Steelers last year, he was really valuable in fantasy. And understand that sometimes, it's harder to make a prediction about a kicker, but I got news for you. It's hard to predict fantasy football in the NFL, no matter what the position is, okay? Who saw Bo Nix scoring over 300 fantasy points last year? These things just kind of happen. So no, I rather would keep kickers, in there, in Dynasty. And if you're not a big fan of, the position, you don't have to draft it early. You're probably not going to draft it early regardless. But getting a guy like a Brandon Aubrey or a Jake Bates, I mean, that could be valuable in fantasy. And sometimes, I mean, I remember kickers helping me win championships and win big matchups. A guy comes out of nowhere and scores, 18 points, 20 points. Now on the defensive side, I'm more for giving points to the players than the like a special teams unit. So I like my defense to just be that defense. So, you know, you're not getting points for, you know, a return touchdown, a return yards, you know, that kind of thing. So I want to reward defenses for playing good defense. I moved the special teams kind of out of there. That's for kickers. That's for, you know, players like Antonio Brown used to be a return man. I mean, that made his value even higher. Reggie Bush used to be a return man. I like that. So I'm not putting that into the defense. So, but no, defenses are important too. I'm a traditionalist. I want my fantasy football to be as close to real football as possible. And I've played in IDP leagues and they're fun and that kind of thing. But I'd prefer defense because IDP leagues in a lot of respects rewards mediocrity. Because, for example, if you're, you know, playing against, you know, Deion Sanders back in the day, Deion Sanders wouldn't have been a good IDP player, but he was the best cover corner in the league, one of the best in the history of the league. Nobody threw to him, right? Darrelle Revis, nobody threw to him. So he never scored any points. But, you know, guys who were, you know, not great cornerbacks who were getting, you know, a lot of passes defensed because people are throwing in their direction, they get rewarded. So I'm not as big on IDPs, although they can be fun. I just wouldn't go crazy. Maybe, you know, 3 max in the starting lineup. But yeah, defenses certainly, you know, are important. I want to make sure that there's enough points rewarded to defenses where they can make an impact on a weekly basis.
I have very mixed feelings on kickers, right? Because kicking can be so random, right? Like you could have a kicker make 2 short field goals and make the game-winning field goal, and it's 6 points, right, for you in your leagues, right? And then you have a kicker who kicks 2 50-yard field goals, and he doubles the points, right? It just feels a little too random for me, and I prefer probably not to have them, but I don't feel strong enough either way.
But see,
go ahead.
I'll say this: fantasy football is random. Okay,
it is,
how many times during the course of you know, our years playing fantasy football, I use Jerome Bettis as an example. Towards the end of Jerome Bettis's career, he was more of like a goal line, like, you know, short yardage type of guy. And I remember a game, I think, where he scored 3 touchdowns from the 1 yard line. That's totally random.
Well, he ended that game with 3 yards. 3 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Totally random, but he probably outscored, you know, 75% of the running backs that week. So like fantasy football to a degree is random, right? You know, when Devery Henderson went 3 weeks without scoring a point, and then all of a sudden he had a 75-yard touchdown pass from Drew Brees, and he had a big game. It's totally random. So like, so the random thing, I kind of push back against that.
I will say, I think of the 3 of us, I probably play in the weirdest dynasty leagues. For example, like this is probably why I've soured on kickers. Before they move the extra point back to where it's a 37-yard field goal now, we used to have in our league where it was minus 100 points if you missed an extra point. Remember when the extra point was from the 1?
Wait. Did you say minus 100?
Right. Again, I hated this rule. Minus 100 points. I hated this rule, by the way. But
point, you just lost the week.
You lost your league. And that's and the point was that. Well, the point was that
I really dislike that.
So do I. So do I. But this is when like extra points were like 99% across the league when everybody was kicking it from the 1 yard line. I think that's probably where I soured on kickers. But I do want to talk about IDP because this is one of the things I do feel strongly about. Is I like IDP because now you have to evaluate defense just like you evaluate offense. You try to evaluate the guys that are going to stay on the field on all 3 downs, the guys that are going to be put in opportunities to score points. And I think one of the things that I really like about IDPs is it just promotes more trades and more crazy trades because now I could trade, hey, my Jackson Smith Egbuka for your Roquan Smith, right? And it promotes more trading in your league because you've got more players in your roster and more guys you're starting. So I'm a fan of IDPs, but I don't feel super strongly either way about team defense or kickers.
Real quick on IDPs. I love anything with more that promotes more trades. I'm with you. I think that's wonderful for any league. I have 2 qualms with IDPs, and Michael mentioned it earlier too. Bad corners are worth more than good corners.
Sure.
Like that makes me crazy. And the other thing is, and I assume people get good at this, I just don't have enough IDP experience. The scorers in every stadium are so different with awarding tackles.
Yes.
You know, like There was one year that when you added up all the Ravens tackles, they had more tackles than plays on the field.
Well, another example is when London Fletcher was playing for Washington. I believe it was
Mhm.
his cousin who was the scorekeeper
Okay,
in Buffalo.
so
So anytime
tackles.
London Fletcher was close to the ball, it's a tackle. So there's that
London
part of it as
Fletcher was
well.
an awesome IDP, by the way. He was
Absolutely.
awesome.
But it's one of those things that it's just another element that you have to study and learn, which I enjoy. Like I love watching, there's a couple of accounts on Twitter that I follow it's called like at Green Dog. They're trying to find who's wearing the green helmet, the green dot on the back of the helmet, because those are the guys that are going to stay on the field every single play. So it just adds.
Cool. I like that part of it.
Yeah, it just adds more depth to your dynasty league, which is always fun. All right, let's talk about another question. Should your startup draft be auction or should it be a snake? We'll debate that and more next. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're out sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days on the course or even off it feel like a drag, and you need that extra boost. I was on the course on Tuesday, struggling once I got to about hole 12, 13. Just took my 5 Hour Energy, felt great, finished out the round strong, shot a 79, little pat on the back. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. And the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without having to chase down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. And this code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, this last question comes from Jared. He wants to know, do you guys prefer auction or snake drafts when you do your startup dynasty drafts?
I think there's a really strong case for both. And I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer. And I think auction has a lot of strategy. It gives everyone an equal opportunity to get Jamar Chase or whoever the elite guy is. I mean, obviously you end up with 112. You're not going to end up with Jefferson or Chase unless you make crazy moves. But in the auction, you have all the power. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. However, if I had to pick, I would pick snake because my favorite thing about startup drafts are the draft pick trades. I'm going to move down in the first round, pick up your future first, give me your 5th round pick, your 7th round pick, and I'll throw in my 20th or whatever, those type of things. And that to me is my favorite part of the whole thing. So you'd lose that obviously with auction.
Fabs, what about you?
I'm not an auction guy. I've played in plenty of them. Maybe it's just because it takes too long. You know what I mean? I'm more of like, I just want to draft. And even in the dynasty startup, which is going to be a little bit longer, it's still not going to be as long as an auction. And so maybe that's just me being lazy. You guys have also heard me say I'm traditional. The NFL does not have an auction for rookies. They have a draft. I understand what Matt said and the appeal of it, because if you have, the 101, then you're going to be able to get Jamar, Bijan, whoever you want. But if you're at the 110, you're not going to be able to get those guys. And in an auction, you have an opportunity to get everybody. So I understand the appeal of that. But I think if you're starting up a dynasty league, I mean, even any kind of league, and, there's obviously an advantage to having, the 101. And some people may think, well, I'd rather have like the back because I get two really good players back to back. Have a little fun with it. Like fantasy football is fun. And you guys know about all these like different punishments that people have now where, You got to go sit at a Denny's with a blow up doll if you finish last. There's all this. I actually wrote an article about that over at Sports Illustrated. All this fun stuff to do. Well, if you're going to start up a league, why not have a competition for who goes first and who ends up going last? Get out there with your 5-hour energy and play a round of golf. And whoever scores the best, you can pick where you want to go. Like, hey, I shot 78, which I haven't done in a very long time, by the way. I want the second overall pick. Allow people to do that. So there's a little bit of competition to it. Go out in a parking lot at a Target and run a 40. I don't know, have fun with it. Go to a bar. Whoever can drink the most beers, gets to make that, whatever it is. Like, I think that's part of like fun. Fantasy football is supposed to be fun. I'm more of a traditionalist. I'd rather have a redraft, but again, like draft position, especially in initial draft, is really important. So have a little bit of fun with, who gets to go where.
I will say, of my last 6 dynasty startups I've done, all of them have been auctioned. However, I will say we've been able to get everybody in the same place to do the auction draft. And I would say if you can get everybody together to do your startup draft, do an auction because it's fun. The player values are all over the place. And I love the ability to construct my team however I want to construct it. But if you can't do that,
that would certainly be great in person because
it is great.
You paid that much for this guy, or
that
would be fun. Yeah,
in person auction is the way to go. I do think if you're having to draft remotely, I do think doing a snake is probably the best. But I would prefer doing it in a slow draft, right? Do it through an email where you have 6 hours to make a pick, and that way you're not feeling rushed. You can take your time and make those trades. That's what I would recommend. But I am an auction elitist. Like, that's my favorite way to draft. All of my home leagues are auction drafts because I do like getting in bidding wars with people and trying to bid other people up. There is an element of competitiveness that you get in these drafts. You just don't quite get into a snake draft.
Totally get it.
Right.
I figured, knowing you, I knew you were going to be an auction guy.
Oh, one of our leagues, my home league that we've been doing, we're going on 18 years now. It's been an auction draft the entire time. And, you start to get where some people like to bid up against other people, and you just get these rivalries in your auction drafts, which is always really fun. It's one of my favorite parts of fantasy leagues.
I think a fast-paced snake is the worst option.
Oh, yeah. Like if you only have 15 seconds to pick, those are...
Yeah. And a startup,
you want to have some time to think about
a lot
how you're building. Yeah.
You might have to set a month aside for the draft, but
exactly. Well, which is fine. Like if you're doing it through an email, that's okay. It's not a big deal. That's why start it in June and you'll have it done before you get to training camp, because not that much is going to change between June and August. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we've got a special guest. It is the great Fabiano. You'll see what I mean. Just tune in. We're going to talk about some players that you should be buying and some that you should be avoiding. Make sure that you download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. You can follow Fabs at Michael_Fabiano.
Marcus, I hear that Fabini guy is a handsome dude. I heard
disagree.
Oh, yeah.
We'll let the audience.
Yeah.
We'll let the audience decide. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys tomorrow.